The day the aliens came to Earth changed everything humanity knew about the universe. For thousands of years, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. On a warm September morning, they got their answer. The ships appeared first over the Pacific Ocean. They were beautiful in a way that human engineers could barely understand. The vessels looked like giant crystals floating in the sky, catching sunlight and breaking it into thousands of rainbow colors. They made no sound as they moved through the clouds. They simply glided, smooth and perfect, like they belonged there. News spread across the planet within minutes. Every television channel showed the same images. Every phone buzzed with alerts. People stopped their cars in the middle of highways just to look up. Children pointed at the sky while their parents held them close, unsure if they should feel wonder or fear. The ships did not attack. They did not broadcast any message. They simply waited, hovering over the ocean, as if giving humanity time to prepare. The United Nations worked faster than it ever had before. Within 3 days, they built a meeting place in the Nevada desert. It was a simple structure, really. Just a large pavilion with white walls and a flat roof. But it would become the most important building in human history. The largest crystal ship descended on the 4th day. It landed without disturbing a single grain of sand. A door opened in its side, though no one had seen any door before that moment. And out stepped the Kalari. Ambassador Vorath was tall, nearly 8 feet, with skin that looked like polished silver. His eyes were large and completely black, reflecting everything they saw like dark mirrors. He had no hair, no ears that humans could see, and his fingers were long with an extra joint that made them move in unsettling ways. When he walked, his feet barely seemed to touch the ground. Behind him came 6 others, each dressed in flowing robes that shimmered with colors that had no names in any human language. They carried no weapons that anyone could see. They showed no fear. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stepped forward to meet them. She was a small woman compared to the aliens, barely reaching Vorath's chest. But she walked with her head high and her shoulders straight. She had led her country through civil war before taking this position. She had faced death more than once. Strange visitors from another world would not make her bend. Vorath studied her as she approached. His black eyes moved over her body, taking in details, measuring, calculating. To his senses, she was remarkably fragile. Her skeleton was brittle compared to Kalari bones. Her skin could be cut by something as simple as a sharp rock. Her muscles were weak, her reflexes slow, her senses dull. She could not see ultraviolet light or hear sounds below 20 hertz. She needed to breathe constantly, drink water daily, and sleep for a third of her short life. Primitive, Vorath thought, though he did not say the word aloud. He had seen many species across the galaxy. Some had natural armor. Some could survive in the vacuum of space. Some could regenerate lost limbs or communicate through telepathy. Humans had none of these gifts. "We greet you in peace," Okonkwo said, her voice steady and clear. "On behalf of all the people of Earth, welcome to our world." Vorath inclined his head slightly. It was a gesture his species used for children and animals, a sign of patient tolerance. He did not realize that Okonkwo noticed this. He did not realize that she understood exactly what it meant. "The Kalari Commonwealth has watched your world for some time," Vorath said. His voice was strange, like multiple tones speaking at once. The translation device he wore converted his words to English, but something alien remained in the sound. "We have seen your struggles, your wars, your suffering. We have decided that you are ready to know the truth of the universe." He spoke as if offering a gift to a beggar. The humans in the pavilion felt it. The soldiers standing guard felt their hands tighten on their weapons. The scientists felt a cold anger building in their chests. But Okonkwo simply smiled. "We are grateful for your wisdom," she said. We have much to learn." Varath did not hear the iron beneath her words. He heard only submission, only the proper response of a lesser species meeting a greater one. This was how it always went. The Kalari had contacted 17 civilizations before Earth. All of them had eventually accepted their place in the hierarchy. Over the following weeks, the Kalari shared information about the galaxy. They explained that thousands of intelligent species existed among the stars. Some had built great empires. Others had destroyed themselves. Many lived under the protection of the Kalari Commonwealth, which had kept peace in this region of space for 40,000 years. 40,000 years. The human leaders repeated to each other in private meetings. 40,000 years of civilization. Humanity had only discovered agriculture 12,000 years ago. They had only learned to fly 100 years ago. They had only split the atom 80 years ago. To the Kalari, they were infants, barely able to crawl. But Amara Okonkwo saw something the Kalari did not. She saw her own people listening carefully to every word the alien spoke. She saw scientists taking notes, asking questions, demanding details. She saw engineers studying the crystal ships with hungry eyes. She saw military leaders calculating distances and weapons and defensive positions. Humans were weak. She knew this. Everyone knew this. But humans had been weak since the beginning of their existence. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. They could not run as fast as horses, or climb as well as monkeys, or swim as well as fish. And yet they had conquered their entire planet. They had split atoms and touched the moon. They had survived ice ages and plagues and countless wars against each other. Weakness, Okonkwo understood, was not the same as helplessness. Weakness could be a teacher. It could force you to think, to plan, to build, to cooperate. It could make you dangerous in ways that the strong could never imagine. She shook Varath's hand at the end of their first formal meeting. His grip was gentle, careful, as if he feared breaking her fragile human bones. "We look forward to learning from you," she said. Varath smiled his tolerant smile. "In time, your species may contribute something of value to the Commonwealth. We will guide you until then." He returned to his ship believing he had gained another protectorate, another primitive species to shepherd through the dangers of the galaxy. He did not realize that humanity had just begun to study their new teachers, and humans had always been very good students. 3 years passed since the Kalari first landed on Earth. In that time, the world changed in ways no one had predicted. The aliens built a station in orbit around the planet. It floated there like a second moon, silver and gleaming, visible on clear nights to anyone who looked up. From this station, Kalari researchers watched humanity with the same curiosity that humans once watched animals in zoos. They were not cruel. They genuinely wanted to help. They shared technologies that solved problems humans had struggled with for centuries. Clean water became available to every village on the planet. Diseases that had killed millions were cured with simple injections. Crops grew faster and stronger, ending hunger in regions that had known nothing but starvation. In exchange, the Kalari asked only for information. They wanted to understand humanity, to study their culture, their history, their strange and violent ways. Teams of researchers visited Earth regularly, observing everything from religious ceremonies to football matches, from political debates to family dinners. Chief Researcher Yalith led the primary study team. She was younger than Varath, more curious, less certain of the answers she thought she knew. Her skin had a slightly blue tint compared to the ambassador's silver, and her movements were quicker, more energetic. She spent more time among humans than any other Kalari, learning their languages, reading their books, watching their films. What she found disturbed her. "They are obsessed with conflict," she reported to the Commonwealth Council during one of her regular updates. Their entertainment revolves around violence. Their heroes are warriors. Their history is a continuous record of bloodshed. She displayed images on the council's viewing screen. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Medieval sieges with catapults and burning oil. Modern wars with tanks and aircraft and nuclear explosions. The Kalari Council members watched with a mixture of disgust and pity. "This is typical of primitive species," one council member said. "They will outgrow it eventually." "Perhaps," Yalis said. "But there is something else. Something I do not fully understand." She changed the display to show different images. Former enemies shaking hands at peace conferences. Cities destroyed by bombs being rebuilt with help from the nations that bombed them. Children of soldiers playing together. Their parents' wars forgotten. "They fight with terrible passion," Yalith explained. "But then they stop. They forgive. They move forward. Enemies become friends within a single generation." The council members did not see why this mattered. The Kalari had conflicts in their past, though they preferred not to discuss them. When Kalari groups had disputes, those disputes lasted for centuries. Grudges were passed down through family lines, remembered and honored, never truly forgotten. "Humans forget," Yalis said. "Or rather, they choose to forget. They decide that the future matters more than the past. They rebuild relationships that should be broken forever." Ambassador Vorath spoke from his seat at the edge of the council chamber. He had returned from Earth with a low opinion of humanity and saw no reason to change it. "Weak memory," he said. "Their brains cannot maintain proper records of grievances. Their short lives make long-term hatred impossible. This is not a strength. It is a limitation." Yalith wanted to argue, but she lacked the evidence to prove her feeling. She only knew that something about humans made her nervous. They learned too quickly. They asked too many questions. They adapted to Kalari technology faster than any species she had studied before in the 3 years since first contact. Humans had already begun building their own versions of Kalari devices. Their copies were crude, ugly, lacking in elegance. But they worked. Sometimes they worked in ways that surprised even Kalari engineers. "They modify everything," Yalith noted in her private research files. "They take what we give them and change it. They ask why things work, not just how. They refuse to simply accept." She visited a human university once, invited to lecture about Kalari history. The students listened politely, but their questions afterward were sharp, probing, challenging. They wanted to know about Kalari weaknesses, about wars the Commonwealth had lost, about technologies that had failed. "Why do you ask such things?" Yalith asked a young woman who had been particularly persistent. The student shrugged. "Because that is where the real learning happens. Success tells you what worked once. Failure tells you what to avoid forever." Yalith thought about this answer for a long time afterward. Meanwhile, the human governments were cooperating in ways they never had before. Old enemies worked together on joint research projects. Military secrets were shared across borders that had been sealed for generations. The presence of aliens in their sky had done what nothing else could. It had united humanity against a common unknown. Not everyone trusted the Kalari. In private meetings, military leaders expressed concern about the alien observation station. They did not like being watched. They did not like the feeling of being judged by creatures who clearly considered themselves superior. "They think we are children," General James Morrison said during a classified briefing at the Pentagon. "They pat our heads and give us toys and expect us to be grateful. So what do you suggest?" asked the American president. "We cannot fight them. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." Morrison smiled, a hard expression that held no warmth. "Not yet. But we are learning fast. And they have no idea how fast we can learn when we need to." Across the world, similar conversations were happening. In Beijing and Moscow, in London and Delhi, in Tokyo and Berlin, human leaders were smiling at their Kalari benefactors, while quietly preparing for possibilities that the aliens had never considered, because humans had learned something important about themselves in the 3 years since first contact. They had looked up at the stars and seen that they were small, and instead of despair, they had felt determination. The universe was large and dangerous and full of beings who saw humanity as weak. This was true, but it had always been true, even before humans knew about aliens. They had always been weak compared to the forces around them. They had always faced threats that should have destroyed them. And they were still here. Yalith finished her 3-year report with a warning that the Council mostly ignored. "Do not underestimate this species," she wrote. "Their weakness has made them clever. Their mortality has made them urgent. Their conflicts have made them adaptable. I believe they will surprise us all." She was right, though not in the way she expected. The surprise was already on its way. The Vraks came without warning, like a disease spreading through the stars that no one knew where they originated. No one knew how long they had been traveling through the dark spaces between galaxies. They simply appeared at the edge of Kalari space and began to consume everything in their path. Their ships were not like any vessels the Commonwealth had seen before. They were organic, living things, grown from materials that Kalari scientists could not identify. They looked like massive insects, with wings of hardened membrane and shells that absorbed weapons fire like water-absorbing stones. They moved in swarms of thousands, blackening the sky of any world they approached. The Vraks themselves were harder to describe. They had no individual form that remained constant. They were a hive mind, a single intelligence spread across millions of bodies that could change shape according to need. One moment they might look like crawling creatures with too many legs. The next moment they might sprout wings and take to the air. Their bodies adapted in real time to whatever environment they encountered, and they were hungry. The first Kalari system fell in less than a week. The crystal ships that had seemed so beautiful and powerful shattered against Vraks' bioweapons like glass against hammers. The Kalari had not fought a real war in thousands of years. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that wanted nothing but destruction. Ambassador Varath received the news on the observation station orbiting Earth. He watched the reports with growing horror as system after system went dark. The Kalari had no defense against enemies who did not negotiate, who did not want territory or resources or power. The Vraks simply wanted to consume. Within 6 months, 4 core systems of the Commonwealth had fallen. Billions of Kalari and their protected species were dead or absorbed into the Vraks collective. The greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known was crumbling, like sandcastles before a tide. Varath sent a message to Earth's Secretary General. He composed it carefully, trying to maintain dignity even as his world collapsed. "The Commonwealth faces an existential threat," he wrote. "We can no longer guarantee your protection. Evacuation ships will arrive in 40 cycles. Please select your most important citizens for transport to safe systems. We will preserve what we can of your species. I'm sorry we could not do more." He expected gratitude, perhaps fear, certainly obedience. He received none of these things. Amaro Konko's response arrived within hours. It was short and strange. "We decline evacuation." "What are the Vraks' weaknesses?" Varath stared at the message for a long time. He did not understand. Evacuation was the only logical response. The Vraks could not be fought. They could only be avoided, and even avoidance was becoming impossible. He replied explaining this. He described the fall of Kalari fleets, the absorption of entire populations, the futility of resistance. He told her that Earth was too far from the front lines to matter strategically. that they had perhaps 2 years before the wracks reached their system. Use that time to prepare your people for evacuation, he urged. Select your best and brightest. We will find a place for them somewhere. Okonkwo's second response was even shorter than her first. Send us everything you know about the wracks, battle recordings, scientific analysis, autopsy reports, if you have them. We will fight. Vareth felt something he had never felt toward humans before. Not pity, not tolerance, not the patient condescension he usually carried. He felt sadness. Genuine, deep sadness for these foolish creatures who did not understand what they faced. But he sent the data anyway. It was the least he could do for a species about to die. What happened next would change everything. Vareth thought he knew. The data reached human governments and was immediately distributed to every research institution on the planet. Within days, thousands of scientists were studying the wracks, looking for patterns, searching for weaknesses that the Kalari had missed in their panic. And they found things. The wracks adapt to threats, Dr. Sarah Chun explained at an emergency summit of world leaders. They absorb technology and biology and use it against their enemies. This is why the Kalari lost. Every weapon they used was studied, copied, and countered. So we cannot win either, said the Russian president. They will adapt to our weapons as well. Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. They adapt to what they encounter, she said. The Kalari showed them energy weapons and crystal armor and elegant tactics developed over millennia. But humans fight differently. We have thousands of years of experience fighting ourselves. We have developed weapons and strategies that are messy, unpredictable, constantly changing. She displayed a chart showing human military history. Not the formal battles that appeared in textbooks, but the guerrilla wars, the improvised explosives, the dirty tricks and desperate measures that humans used when facing stronger enemies. The wracks have never seen anything like us, Chun said. They have consumed 11 species and learned from all of them. But all of those species were more advanced than us, more unified, more predictable. We are none of those things. You are saying our weakness is our strength, said the Chinese premier. I am saying we are chaos, Chun replied. And chaos is very hard to adapt to. The decision was made that night. Humanity would not run. Humanity would fight. Every nation contributed what it could. Factories that had made cars now made weapons. Laboratories that had researched medicine now researched ways to kill. Old enemies set aside their differences and worked together with a focus that surprised even themselves. Vareth watched from his station as the humans mobilized. He saw their crude ships taking shape, ugly vessels of welded metal and exposed machinery. He saw their soldiers training with a fierce joy that disturbed him. He saw their leaders making plans that assumed victory was possible. They did not understand. He said to Yalith, who had joined him in orbit after her research station was evacuated. They cannot win. They will die for nothing. Yalith watched a human shuttle rising from the planet below. It was carrying volunteers to a training station on the moon. Perhaps, she said, but I am no longer certain what humans can and cannot do. Vareth shook his head. He had tried to save them. He had offered them escape. If they chose to die instead, that was their decision. He did not know that he would soon be fighting beside them. He did not know that they would teach him what it truly meant to be strong. The first human fleet launched 18 months after the wracks were discovered. It should have taken decades. Every species in the galaxy knew that building interstellar warships required time, resources, and knowledge that humanity simply did not have. But humans had never been good at accepting what they supposedly could not do. The ships were ugly. Admiral Chen Weilin admitted this freely as she stood on the bridge of her flagship, the vessel that would lead humanity's first battle among the stars. The walls were bare metal. The floors vibrated with poorly balanced engines. The weapon systems had been designed by committees and built by factories that had never made anything for space before. But the ships worked. They flew. They carried weapons that could hurt Vrax's bioships. And most importantly, they carried humans who were ready to die far from home. The fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system. 200 ships crewed by volunteers from every nation on Earth. They were teachers and farmers, doctors and criminals, parents and children barely old enough to fight. They had trained for months in conditions that killed the weak and hardened the survivors. Admiral Chun addressed them all through the communication system. "The Kalari have told us we cannot win," she said. "They have shown us records of their defeats, their retreating fleets, their dying worlds. They expect us to fail." She paused. On 200 ships, 50,000 humans waited for her next words. "They may be right. We may all die out here. But I promise you this. We will make the Vrax remember us. We will make them bleed for every system they take. We will show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our home." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. For most of the humans aboard, it was their first time leaving the solar system. Many of them would never return. Their destination was the Kareth system, where a Vrax swarm was preparing to assault another Kalari world. The Commonwealth had written off this system already. They were retreating to more defensible positions, abandoning millions of their people to die. The humans had different plans. Ambassador Varath had joined the fleet against his better judgment. He told himself he wanted to observe, to record human tactics for future study. In truth, he could no longer stand watching from safety while others fought and died. He stood beside Admiral Chun as the fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. The Karath system spread before them, a yellow sun surrounded by 7 planets. The third planet was Earth-like, covered in blue oceans and green continents. It was beautiful. The Vrax swarm hung in space between the fleet and the planet. Thousands of bioships, their organic hulls pulsing with terrible life. They turned toward the human vessels with movements that seemed almost curious. "They are scanning us," reported the tactical officer. "They have never seen human ships before." "Good," said Chun. "Let them look. They will not understand what they see." The battle began. Human ships did not fight like Kalari vessels. They did not maintain elegant formations or follow careful tactical doctrines. They swarmed and scattered, attacking in patterns that seemed random but were actually coordinated chaos. The Vrax tried to adapt. When they developed defenses against human missiles, the humans switched to energy weapons. When they countered energy weapons, the humans used kinetic projectiles. Simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. When the Vrax adapted to that, the humans began ramming their ships directly into enemy vessels. The crews ejecting at the last moment or sometimes not ejecting at all. Vor8 crouched in horror and amazement. "This is insane," he said. "They are throwing away their ships. Their people." Chun's face was calm, though her hands gripped her command console until her knuckles turned white. "We have more ships, more people, and we can build more faster than they can adapt. You cannot sustain these losses." Chun turned to look at him. Her eyes were hard, ancient, carrying the weight of every war humanity had ever fought. "Watch us." The battle lasted 19 hours. 19 hours of fire and death and screaming. 19 hours of human ships dying by the dozens while Vrax bioships fell by the hundreds. The humans invented new tactics in real time. When one approach failed, they tried another. When commanders fell, new ones took their place without pause. They communicated constantly, sharing information, learning from each death. Adapting faster than any species the Vrax had ever consumed. Varath saw a human destroyer, badly damaged and losing atmosphere. turned directly into the heart of the Vrax formation. Its captain broadcast a final message. "Remember my name. Lieutenant Commander David Park. Bizen, Korea, Earth. Tell my daughter I love her." The ship exploded. Its reactor overload took 17 Vrax vessels with it. And then something impossible happened. The Vrax stopped advancing. For a long moment, their swarm hung motionless in space. Then, slowly, they began to pull back. They were retreating. The bridge crew of Chun's flagship stared at their screens in disbelief. No species had ever forced the Vrax to retreat. No battle in the recorded history of their expansion had ended any way except total Vrax victory. "They are leaving," said the tactical officer. "They are actually leaving." Chun nodded slowly. Her hands were shaking now, though her voice remained steady. "Damage report. We have lost 123 ships. Approximately 60% of our fleet. Casualty estimates are still being calculated, but 30,000, Chun said. At least 30,000 dead." The number hung in the air. 30,000 humans gone in a single day. Sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and lovers. All dead in the darkness between stars. Varth expected Chun to mourn, to rage, to show some sign of the trauma that such losses should cause. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and began issuing orders. "All ships capable of faster than light travel will proceed to Rally Point 7. Damaged vessels will remain here for repairs. We need to analyze Vrax tactics and prepare countermeasures before the next engagement." The next engagement? Varth could not contain his shock. "You have just suffered catastrophic losses. How can you think of fighting again?" Chun looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Ambassador, humanity has been fighting for survival since we climbed down from trees. We have lost more than this in single battles of our world wars. We have faced enemies who wanted to exterminate us, and we are still here." She turned back to her screens, where the remaining ships were forming up for the journey home. "The Vrax made a mistake today. They learned that we can be hurt, but they also learned that we do not stop when we are hurt. That knowledge will cost them. We will make sure of it." The human fleet limped home to rebuild. The galaxy watched and wondered what these strange, fragile creatures were becoming. The war lasted 7 years. 7 years of blood and fire and sacrifice. 7 years of human fleets pushing deeper into Vrax territory. Of battles that killed millions on both sides. Of entire species rising up to fight alongside humanity against the swarm that had consumed their worlds. Admiral Chun Wei-Lin did not survive to see the end. She fell in the Battle of Korean, leading a desperate assault to protect a refugee convoy carrying 3 million Kalari civilians. Her final order was to ram her damaged flagship into the largest Vrax command ship. The explosion killed her and destroyed the vessel that coordinated the entire Vrax fleet in that sector. Others took her place. That was how humans worked. They fell and others rose. They died and others carried their memory forward. The war machine that humanity built was not dependent on any single leader or any single ship. It was a living thing, adapting and growing and learning from every loss. The Kalari watched in amazement as their former protectorate became something they did not recognize. Human military technology advanced more in 7 years than Kalari technology had advanced in 7,000. They invented weapons that disturbed even their allies. Biological agents that targeted Vrax neural networks. Gravity weapons that tore bioships apart from the inside. Ships that could appear and disappear, striking and vanishing before the enemy could respond. And always more humans. They bred faster than any species that Kalari knew. They sent their children to war as soon as they were old enough to hold weapons. They volunteered for missions that guaranteed death, smiling as they climbed into ships they knew would never return. They are not afraid. Yaleth told Varath as they watched another human fleet depart for the front lines. I have scanned thousands of them. Their biology should make them terrified. They have stress hormones flooding their systems, heart rates elevated, all the signs of extreme fear. But they fight anyway. Courage? Varath suggested. Yaleth shook her head. Something more than that. Something I do not have words for. The war turned slowly in humanity's favor. The Vraks had never faced an enemy that did not break. They had absorbed 11 species by simply overwhelming them with numbers and adaptation. But humans matched them in numbers and surpassed them in adaptation. Every tactic the Vraks developed was countered within days. Every advantage they gained was neutralized before they could use it. And then, in the 7th year, humanity did something that no species had ever done. They found the Vraks' homeworld. It was hidden in a region of space that warped. Sensor readings, surrounded by defenses that had destroyed every scout that approached. But humans had learned patience. They had learned to sacrifice ships and lives to gather information. They had learned that knowing your enemy was worth any price. The final assault gathered every ship humanity and its allies could gather. 4,000 vessels representing 20 species, all following human commanders, all trusting human tactics. Ambassador Varath commanded a support squadron of Kalari ships. Old and outdated, but still capable of fighting. Admiral Sarah Morrison, daughter of the general who had first warned about the Kalari, led the fleet. She was 32 years old and had been fighting since she was 16. She had lost her parents, her siblings, her husband, and both of her children to the war. She had nothing left except the fight itself. This ends today, she told the assembled fleet. The Vraks have terrorized this galaxy for too long. They have consumed trillions of lives. They have destroyed civilizations that existed before our sun was born. Today, we stopped them. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 4,000 ships against a swarm of tens of thousands. The Vraks fought with the desperation of creatures defending their home, their hive mind, their very existence. Humans fought with something else. Something that Varath finally understood as he watched ship after ship sacrifice itself to push through Vraks' defenses. They fought with hope, not hope for themselves. Most of them knew they would die, but hope for the future, for the children who would grow up in a galaxy without the Vraks, for the species who would never have to face the swarm because humanity had stopped it here. Sergeant Maria Santos led the ground assault on the central hive mind nexus. Her team cut through Vraks' defenders with weapons that melted organic armor and tactics that the hive mind could not predict. They reached the core, the pulsing heart of Vraks' consciousness, with only 7 soldiers left from an original force of 500. Santos planted the fusion charges herself. Her armor was cracked and leaking atmosphere. She had perhaps 10 minutes of air remaining. Package delivered. She transmitted to the fleet above. Detonation in 60 seconds. There was no way to escape. No time to reach the extraction point. Santos and her 6 remaining soldiers knew this. They had known it when they volunteered for the mission. It has been an honor, Santos said. The charges detonated. The hive mind nexus exploded. And across the galaxy, every Vrak suddenly stopped. The hive mind was not just their communication network. It was their consciousness. Without it, they were nothing but empty shells. Organic machines with no one controlling them. The Vraks died screaming on frequencies every species in the galaxy could hear. The war was over. In the aftermath, Ambassador Varath stood before the Commonwealth Council to deliver his final report on humanity. He was old now, his crystalline body clouded with age, his movements slow and careful. But his voice remained strong. I told them they were weak, he said. I cataloged their frailties, their limitations, their countless imperfections. I saw a species barely worthy of notice, let alone respect. He paused, looking at the council members who had shared his assumptions. I was wrong. He displayed humanity's history again, but now the images told a different story. Every weakness had forced them to adapt. Every limitation had pushed them to innovate. Every defeat had taught them lessons they used to achieve victory. Humans are weak, Vorth continued. They know this. They have always known this. And that knowledge, that constant awareness of their own fragility, has made them stronger than any species I have ever encountered. He showed images from the war. Human soldiers charging into certain death. Human engineers building weapons in hours that should have taken years. Human leaders making decisions that saved billions of lives. We Kalari lived for 40,000 years, believing that strength meant power, that survival meant avoiding danger. Humans taught us that true strength comes from knowing you can break and choosing to stand anyway. The Council voted unanimously to offer humanity full Commonwealth membership. But everyone understood that this was merely a formality. Humanity did not need Kalari approval anymore. They had earned their place among the stars with blood and sacrifice and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Secretary General David Park, son of the commander who had died at Karath, accepted the offer on behalf of Earth. He was young for his position, barely 40, but his eyes carried the weight of everything his species had endured. "We thank you for this honor," he said. "We look forward to building a future together." Vorth watched the ceremony from the edge of the chamber. Beside him, Yala stood in respectful silence. "I still do not fully understand them," Vorth admitted. "Even after everything we have seen, they remain a mystery to me." Yalath nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is the point. Perhaps they are not meant to be understood, only respected." Vorth considered this. He thought of all the humans he had known, all the sacrifice he had witnessed, all the impossible things they had accomplished. "Yes," he said finally. "Respected indeed." The ceremony ended. The diplomats departed. But in the Great Hall of the Commonwealth Council, a new statue had been erected. It showed a human figure, small and fragile, standing alone against an endless darkness. The inscription read simply, "They were weak. They fought anyway." It was the greatest compliment the galaxy could offer, and humanity, as always, had earned it.